Hi everyone, welcome to this FE CashCalc tip. This is going to be around guaranteed income products and how do you weave guaranteed income products into your cash flow forecast. There's two different ways of doing this. We can either look at traditional annuity route. So how do you take an annuity and plumb that into your calculations? And equally, we've recently created a really neat, slick integration with Just and their SLI product, the guaranteed income product. So we'll take you through how to use that and how to generate a cash flow based on that logic instead. But let's start off with an annuity purchase. So this client we're going to be using today is Cynthia Shaw. Just a quick overview of her situation. She's got two pensions, one employer pension, one Aviva SIP. She's also got an ISA and she's got premium bonds as well. And there's some fairly basic standard growth rates. And in terms of incomes and expenses, she's got a salary coming in every month, £4,000. From today up until retirement, which is only a few years away. And post-retirement, she'll have the state pension kicking in. And underneath that, you can see that her expenses as of today until retirement is conveniently £4,000 a month, so equal to her salary. But then after that, post-retirement, she won't need as much money. And therefore, we've calculated that she'll need about £3,000 a month to live comfortably post-retirement. And that will create a nice little cash flow. Looks a bit like this, where my client accumulates for the next few years, then retires, draws down £3,000 a month up until she runs out of money, expected to be 97, 98, and then she's in the red by about 57,000 if she were to live up into 100. One of the concerns of our client is that by the time she hits late 80s, early 90s, there's not really much of a pot left for her children in inheritance. So we want to start looking at an annuity purchase. What does that do to the cash flow? How does that alter it post-retirement? So to add an annuity, you use contributions and withdrawals, and you can add it in here. Now, before I do this, it's just worth pointing out we have done this in past tips, so I'd certainly recommend looking at some of the basic tips if you're not aware of this. I don't want to labor this too much, but if you click on that little plus icon, you can create duplicate cash flows. So if I were to add an annuity into a cash flow, but I wanted to keep the original to be able to compare it, you just need to simply, just as a recap, you need to click on that little plus icon, say this is my annuity example. I want to create a brand new forecast, but I want to clone from an existing forecast called current situation. And if I click on create, it will essentially create for me a new example called with annuity. And now I can make adjustments to this one and very quickly compare them. So under quick add, you can click on annuity purchase. It's a fairly standard quote page, and I can say, look, purchase at age of the event of 67 when my client retires. What pension pot do I want to take this from? We're going to use that employer pension of hers, the big one. 424 is the expected value at that pension retirement age of 67. And then I can specify either a percentage or an amount of that pot that we want to take. And I'm just going to say 50% of that pot we're going to be using. So 212,000 projected. And then I've obviously gone away and spoken to some providers, and I'm fairly certain we can get 13,000 of guaranteed income for the client each year. And is it level? Is it index? We'll keep on level and click on add annuity purchase. And what the system does behind the scenes for you very quickly and conveniently under incomes and expenses, it adds an extra line item there. So it adds in the annuity income, 13,000 a year. And equally under cash flow model, you'll see it auto adjust, and suddenly you'll see that cratering. Your the pension pot for this particular client was the employer pension. Half of that has now been used for the annuity, and hence why half of the value has been lost in the following year when they're 67, 68. However, interestingly, because the remaining pots are no longer needed as much for that £3,000 a month, because we've now guaranteed 13,000 a year, suddenly the overall results are significantly better. So if we look at the headline numbers at the very bottom, suddenly she's positive 54,000 by the time she hits 100, as opposed to negative 50 odd thousand. And you can also see the effect of that using money in, money out. So you can see that the salaries coming in for these next few years, which easily equates to the expense line of £4,000 a month, but then the expenses go down to £3,000 a month or 36,000 a year. How are those expenses being met post-retirement? Well, we've got the savings pots of hers, the pensions, the NS&I premium bonds, etc. That's going to help some of it. Then she's got the state pension, but almost like a third of it is going to be the annuity income. And you'll notice the annuity income actually goes down in value because it's not indexed, it's level. So although it does start at 13,000 in real terms, but by the time she's 100, it's actually worth only about 5,000. But that's all taken into account in my cash flow model. And we can now very quickly compare that. We can say, well, look, Mr. and Mrs. Client, this is what your current situation looks at the very, very bottom. However, if we were to use an annuity, this is what your cash flow would do, and this is how much better your position would be, a delta of almost 100,000. So that's looking at adding an annuity into a cash flow board. About if you wanted to use a just SLI solution, a just SLI guaranteed income solution. Well, if I click on back to contributions withdrawals and come to actually, we'll do this on current situation so you can see how this looks. If we click on contributions withdrawals, again, I would have created a duplicate. And if I click on quick add, I now want to include a just SLI purchase into my current situation. So I'll click on secure lifetime income instead of annuity purchase. And you get this little quote page load up, quite similar to the annuity page. We can specify the age at which the client is going to be purchasing this SLI product, purchasing using what pot. We're going to be using the employer pension, again, forecast to be about 424. And then we can take how much income is required or how much premium to invest. Again, you can toggle between the two. Given that we use 13,000 in the last example, let's do that here. We basically want SLI to produce 13,000 of income for us, and all of these fields is what SLI or just need to crunch the numbers and provide the quote to us. This will be pre-populated if you've already completed the fact find for the client. If it's not, no biggie, you can just simply populate that yourself. But the moment you click on indicative quote or get indicative quote, all of that information is just simply sent to Just. They crunch all the numbers for us and then pass the information back. Within a matter of seconds, I've now got a quote. It's basically going to cost 188,000 premium to invest to guarantee that level of income. You can click on request contact and find out more information about the SLI product if you're not too familiar with it. But the moment you click on add SLI, very similar to what the annuity did, it then builds that into your cash flow. Now I've done that here, so we'll just click on just SLI example. So I've done that exact exercise. So when I come back to my cash flow model, you can see it's adjusted automatically. Now, a couple of differences. You'll notice it doesn't crater, unlike the annuity purchase, because of the cash in values of Just. So you can see that just gradually filtering in. And then you've got these nice markers as well, these survival markers. So you can kind of educate the clients, the actual chance of you hitting these markers, Mr. and Mrs. Clients. We're talking about surviving into your late 80s, early 90s. We can see the chances of that, and equally reaching the age of 100. And interestingly, if we scroll down, you can see now we're suddenly 136,000 positives. So it seems to be getting better and better. And obviously the main difference here is, whereas with the annuity purchase, my first example, it was expected that I already had those figures, but I would have had to do some heavy lifting here. I would have had to go off and find these figures from the provider. That's the beauty of this SLI solution. It's already done for you. So you don't need to do any heavy lifting. You just simply tell the system what you want, and it goes and talks to Just on your behalf. And then the figures are passed back and automatically updates the cash flow. The last thing I wanted to show you as well, which kind of works across all of them, is you might be looking at these cash flows thinking, well, actually, this gives us a real opportunity here, given that so much of that income requirement is now covered off by that guaranteed income product. It could mean that the remaining pots I could take more risk with. And particularly with this particular scenario, I'm looking at these pots thinking, okay, well, maybe not with the pensions, but I'm looking at the ISA and the premium bonds. They're not doing anything. We certainly don't need them. And they only really come in at the age of 95, and then they're needed. So actually, for those in particular, we could use the logic that wouldn't it be better off if the client went up that risk grade rather than investing into something that's pretty much balanced stroke cautious? We can go up to more moderately adventurous or even adventurous solution. That will have to be a conversation I have with the client. But again, we can create a duplicate of this one and then adjust. So I can come to the savings pots. Ultimately, I would delete that one and delete that one and create a brand new investment pot. And I would call that my whatever solution you want it to be called. But I would say, my advisor MPS 7 or MPS 4, whatever you want it to be called. And I would add 145,000 into that pot and essentially end up with this. So I'd now have 3 pots rather than 4. I've aggregated 2 of them into my new MPS 4 solution, and I'm using a slightly higher growth rate, whereas the last one we were just looking at had a growth rate of 4% and 3%. Well, my logic is we're going to be going up the risk spectrum. You're going to be invested about 20, 30 years. So we would strongly recommend we should be able to achieve quite comfortably, probably erring on the side of caution, we should be able to achieve 5% growth with that. Now, if we look at my cash flow model, Suddenly it's got significantly better. We've gone from minus 54 or 57,000 in the red, and now we've managed to meander our way through all these different solutions. We've actually found a really good combination here where we're turbocharging the income requirement with an SLI product, and then we're able, as it gives us a bit of headroom or legroom to go and invest in more riskier solutions with the remaining pots to generate a high level of growth. And now suddenly it leaves a fairly substantial pot size for my client to consider inheritance to their children. And finally, you would just compare the forecast. We could go back to where we started. There we go, current solution at the very bottom, where we're 57 in the red, to the new proposed solution, Mr. and Mrs. Client, where we're mixing your pots around a bit. But we think we can get a solution that looks very good over the coming years. So that's guaranteed income products and CashCalc. Hope you found that useful. Keep watching for further tips. Thanks for watching.